This will only stop. This conversation around Checo's future will only stop when either his performance significantly improves relative to Max, or he departs. And I just don't see how he turns this around.
Red Bull, as short term as they are, will be making a mistake by prioritizing form over Checo Perez's class, because he is class. It's a good driver, Tommo, in equal machinery, bruv. That Lewis Hamilton who's had Weetabix, the one that we saw at the Mexican Grand Prix this weekend, equal machinery, bruv. Do you think Lewis Hamilton can take it to Mr. Max Verstappen, bruv, and ultimately beat him? Because this is the question that I'm getting from the Mexican Grand Prix.
If you want to have a go at me for an opinion I genuinely have, and call me out every name under the sun, I can deal with that. But when you're having a go at me and attacking my character or whatever for something that I'm not trying to communicate, words are a vessel for our feelings or whatever we want to communicate. When that's the stuff that really bothers me.
If we're talking about race and social Tom, I'm not going to talk about it. We can sit down at the table and have a drink about it and have a proper conversation. I'm not going onto Twitter to talk about that stuff.
It's not the place.
I'm not going on there so I can say something and then somebody can say, oh, but Cameron, on the 16th of September 2021, you said this, which is in diametric opposition to what you're saying. Tommo, I'm not. Hello and welcome to another Shakedown with me. No more Baxty, no more Shez. They'll be back next week, but I've got somebody else, somebody very special, near and dear to my heart. Market leading settings in F1 YouTube. My guy, my friend, your friend, Tommo. How are you doing, sir?
I am fantastic to be on the Cameron F1 channel, mate. Gassed. Pleasure to be here, mate. Thank you for having me. Let's chat some Formula Uno, my friend.
We're going to have to, aren't we, Tommo? It's not like there's a couple bits and bobs going on, isn't there, man? Let's talk about the Grand Prix, bruv. How did you... give me a rating. I'm going to play your questions back to you. What did you rate it out of 10?
Yeah, I think it was about 6. I think the red flag... I mean, look, who knows what would have happened without the red flag? Obviously, we had Max going for a 2-stop and the 1-stop runners. Maybe Ricciardo could have held a couple more positions higher up. It's in hindsight, we don't know, but the red flag did spice things up a little bit, and having Yuki and Lando coming through the field, bit of a tire offset at times as well with the medium and hard runners. I'd say it was a 6. Pretty good by Mexico standards as well, because last year was a stinker.
Oh,
absolute
mate.
Oh. So, yeah, you know what? We take those in Mexico. We take those. But all in all, the main takeaway is that, mate, I'm so gutted for Checo. All of that build-up, all of that expectation, all of that support. I mean, I think I took for granted just how fanatical the Checo fandom is in Mexico. I think it outdoes, the Orange Army for Max. I really do. And to end it all in turn 1, and maybe that what's the best word to describe Checo's move into turn 1? Maybe that aggressiveness, maybe that risk-taking approach, maybe signals that he's maybe not expecting too many more Mexican Grand Prix. I don't know.
Oh, Tommo straight in there, bruv. It's techie, man. So go on then, let's dissect it. The move. Initially, I saw the move. I was like, well, that's Checo's fault. He's been overly ambitious there. What's he doing, mate? Lewis Hamilton a couple of races ago, Max Verstappen at Cups a couple of years ago. And then to hear him in the post-race, Tommo, the way that he's kind of framed it, I'm like, you know what, bruv? You actually had nothing to lose. You wanted to win your home race, and this was the opportunity, right? Had you put that move on Max and Charlotte the inside, then you would have stood. That would have been your best chance. I don't hate that he's just rolled the dice, right, Tommo? Sometimes you gotta the old Senna thing, right? If you no longer go for a gap, then you're no longer a racing driver, or nah?
Yeah, I mean, look, given the context of the season as a whole, the pressure that's on him, and the lack of momentum he was carrying into this race, and then he, I'm sure we'll talk about qualifying, but he's within a tenth and a half of Max, which is as close as he's been to Max for for a long time. And maybe in the race, pace wise, I don't think he was a mile off Max. He's always run well at his home Grand Prix. But yeah, I think it wasn't a move that he's thinking about, holding on to P2. It's a move that I'm at my home Grand Prix. I don't know how much longer I'm going to have, not just be able to participate in his home Grand Prix, but have the car underneath him to potentially win it. Because, if he can come out of that turn one in second behind Max, there's still a chance. Like bad pit stop, strategy, whatever. Like there's various elements that could, and obviously we got a red flag, and that could have ended up going in Checo's favor, maybe if he hadn't have ended up. We'll never know. But yeah, I think it's a desperate move that I understand. I understand why you go for that move. But he could have just cut the corner, Cam. He could have just carried on and just lived to fight another day, and he didn't. You know what I mean? Like we've seen that so many times.
Yeah,
and, yeah. And Leclerc as well. Leclerc ended up cutting the corner, didn't he?
Yeah.
After the contact, and he was a lucky boy to get through it as well. But
Mate.
Yeah, I get it, but it was on him, surely.
Oh, bless him. So what's next then, Tommo? Is that the end of Checo Perez? Because Albert Fabrega, the world-renowned F1 journalist, put out a cheeky, very cryptic tweet alluding to some news that he'd heard that's made him very upset. What are we? Am I connecting dots that I shouldn't be connecting, Tommo, to say that that's Checo? That's the end of Checo Perez now for 2024, and that Danny Rick, having absolutely smahooshed it out the park, is nailed on to be in that second Red Bull seat next year.
Yeah, I think I've been consistent in my belief that seat for 24 has been up for grabs for a while and remains up for grabs. This is Red Bull, right? You'll remember the sounds that they were making just before they dropped Pierre Gasly. Of course, yes, Checo brings a significant financial income to that team. You've got Inter MX, you've got Telcel, you've got Claro. It's just three brands off the top of my head that I know are directly funneled through Checo and Carlos Slim. They're one of few teams that are turning a profit. It's not a crazy profit, but it's a profit nonetheless, and not many F1 teams are operating at a profit, and I'm sure big daddy Red Bull likes that. But yeah, when you've got a driver like Daniel Ricciardo, who we know on his day can be very, very capable and very, very good, and when you've got Checo, mate, I just when will this will only stop. This conversation around Checo's future will only stop when either his performance significantly improves relative to Max, or he departs. And I don't see how he turns this around. This is his third season at that team. He should be more settled into that team than ever, and he feels more adrift than ever. What is it that changes next year? Baku's not until round 17 next year, so we can't rely on that early doors. Yeah, he's got Saudi early on. He's got a couple of tracks that might lend to his strengths, but yeah, I feel like the writing's been on the wall for a long time, and this result just hammers that point home, to be honest, mate.
Tommo, F1 is a cruel world, right? I don't like this sort of chat, Tommy. You're not wrong, bruv, but it feels really harsh, man. Like he's had a tough run with all the chat that Marco's been doing in the news, and obviously being teammate to Max. It's not an easy ask for Checo, Tommo, but I don't disagree with you, bruv. I think that's
where do you sit on it, Cam? Because I think I think we've had different opinions. I think over the course of the year, I think I've been very open. I've been saying Daniel Ricciardo will be in that seat since mid-season, and I don't know. For me, that's the issue. It's like I can't rationalize an argument that Checo improves enough to be within 2-3 tenths, which I think is all that Red Bull really need. I can't. He's so experienced. He's so set in his ways, and he's as far off as ever. And Max isn't going to suddenly lose confidence in this car next year. So how does it get better?
Bro, this is the 10-step plan, Tommo. I honestly, bro, I don't know. I feel like Checo's Checo's approach over the past couple of races has been more serious, right? Like he already looks more match fit. He's spending more time in the sim. But me and you both know, Tommy, that those very small changes take a while to see through to positive outcomes, right? You don't just start going to the gym today and then lift 2 plates tomorrow. It takes a minute. So I'd honestly like to, I don't think you will get it. I think this is me begging, hoping that Santa Claus delivers my Christmas presents down the tree this year, down the chimney this year. It's pipe dreams. I personally, though, Tom, I would like to see Checo Perez get just a bit more time. Like, say, first half of next year, maybe. Just so we can see that these, if he's taking it more serious, then we should absolutely see some improvement by then. But to just turf him now, it feels a bit harsh, bruv, especially with it in the mind that Checo Perez is no bloody slouch, Tomo. He's not a schmuck. Just isn't. Remember, it might have been a while since he's like won a Grand Prix. Do you know what I mean? Since we've seen him do special things. 2021, there was a couple of those instances. But we just know that he isn't a schmuck. We just know. And I think Red Bull, as short term as they are, will be making a mistake by prioritizing form over Checo Perez's class, because he is class. He's a good driver, Tomo. And more to the point, Danny Rick's coming to some good form. Is Danny Rick the guy to do what you're asking in that seat? Tomo, I don't know.
The thing is, listen, I think the saddest part of this whole situation, if it doesn't improve and if Checo gets dropped, is that unfortunately he's going to be remembered by a large number of fans as the guy who got slapped by Max Verstappen. If Williams had never given Albon the opportunity to return to Formula One, and we're seeing Alex drive at an incredible level this year, easy top 10 driver on form. You could argue maybe even top 5, just in terms of form, what he's delivering in that car. And if Williams hadn't given him that, put their hand out to him, given that opportunity, the way he would be perceived, it's just this. He came in, got destroyed by Max, then you retired him, and he's gone and raced in, DTM and in the States or whatever, right? And the difference with Checo's at a very different stage of his career. He was fortunate that opportunity presented itself when it did, and Red Bull were right. I've said this consistently. They were right to go for him over Alex. And I think it was his experience that made the difference in 21 to help Max achieve that first world title in terms of the times he's, helped out in Abu Dhabi or helped out in Turkey, defending against Lewis and all this, right? I think Checo did that job. But all in, like, the Racing Point Checo, the Force India Checo, he was at this one team for like 7 seasons and did bits. But what Checo did in the past is irrelevant to Red Bull right now. Like, it is, right? It's like, this is a numbers game. This is sport. And what he did in the past is irrelevant. He is qualifying consistently. And again, close to this weekend, but half a second, 0.6 off of Max. That's pretty much what Albon and Gasly were doing relative to Max in qualifying. Like, if you look at the numbers, like, this is where Ricciardo has been the only driver in equal machinery to Max. And you could argue science, but obviously that was right at the start of both of their careers in F1. That's been anywhere near Max and anywhere near that 2 to 3 tenths gap that I think, for me, that's the ideal pace differential. You got that's where Bottas and Hamilton were. Bottas out-qualified Hamilton about 30% of the time over their 5 years together. He never missed a Q3. Never missed a Q3. Bonkers. Checo's I'm sure this year he's probably been out in Q3 more than he's been in Q3. I don't know the number off the top of my head, right? This is not like, if Red Bull have to assume that the others, Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari, whoever, they have to assume they're going to close the gap next year. And with Checo being as far off as he is, with Max clear, imagine how far Checo would be off. Again, assuming things don't improve, which I don't think they will, because I don't see how they would. Imagine how far Checo's going to be qualifying down the road if everyone else gets their car within at least fighting distance of Max. And you give Fernando a good Aston, or a Lewis a good Mercedes, or Charles a good Ferrari. It's going to be even worse than it is now, mate. Yeah, this is the thing. It feels like there's not. I can't, even with the best will in the world for Checo, who's had a fantastic career. give me an argument that it's going to get better that I can actually believe in. Because right now I'm not seeing one.
Oh, the death knell, Tommo. This is techie, bruv. As I try and reach for an argument, I'm not finding one, bruv. It's just
in the comments, give me a rational reason why I should believe, because I'd love that. I was all Checo this weekend. I was so gutted for him that he went out because he's a quality bloke. He's done so much good work, back in Mexico, charity work. He's given millions, and his sister runs a foundation. They do amazing things. He's come from a part of the world that's chronically underrepresented in terms of talent coming through. Obviously, we've not had many Mexican F1 drivers. I know we've had plenty of drivers from the Americas, but seeing him do well and the fan base is cultivated, he's done that for a reason, because he's a great bloke and he's a great ambassador for the country, and he's going to inspire loads of young kids. I want to see him do well more than anything else. I assure you. I was gutted for Alex when he got dropped, but when he was getting dropped for Checo, I was like, you know what, I can take that, because he deserves a seat. He deserves to be in the sport more than Alex is. At that moment, and I just it sucks, man.
Oh, mate. Very depressing, this Checo Perez subject topic. Let's segue onto one Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson Hamilton. Tommo, how did you rate the chap's drive this weekend? What rating are you giving it?
Oh, I mean, it's a 9 out of 10, isn't it? What did Lewis, they were both struggling, him and George, in qualifying, where, they've been pretty close all season. But in the race, Lewis, just kind of, I saw a post-race, he was saying he kind of copied Jensen's old style in terms of being really smooth with the tyres, and the way he he got fastest lap at the end on those mediums that Ferrari thought were going to fall off about 20 laps from the end. So
chaos
speaks volumes. I think Lewis's star quality, and I think, if you dig a bit deeper over the course of him and George, Lewis has, I think, consistently had the edge. But I think right now that edge is becoming a bit of a gap, which I think is a good thing, because we've talked about this, on Last Lap many a time, mate. Them being too close is a problem. Mercedes, understandably, rightfully, feel like they owe giving Lewis the opportunity to fight for his 8th world title. And I know when we had you and Baxty on, Baxty was like, if George is going quicker, they'll give him preference. And I'm like, nah, I don't think that's going to happen. And the way Lewis is driving, they won't have to make that decision, because he will make George the default number 2, at least for now.
Bosh. And I'm hoping, bruv, my mind on the back of a drive like this weekend, I go back to numerous arguments that I've had about Lewis potentially being in his prime still, or potentially on the down to when he puts that move up the inside of Charles Leclerc. I'm like, mate, that is levels, Tommo. It's can't even, there are no words. The bravery, the racecraft, the wheel knowledge. He is, when he's in that mode, when he's had his Weetabix in the morning, there's very few on that grid who can beat that Lewis Hamilton, right? But Tommo, let me ask you this question, because this is the argument that we've been having on Spaces, As I look at Max Verstappen, so in my review, I was reduced to Max Verstappen hyperbole again. Just looking at some of the moves, the way he moved on the I want to say on the initial start, the subtle weaving, just subtle enough to make sure that the guys behind don't get a proper slipstream, but that he's not going to get caught by the FIA. I just automatically got caught up in the Max Verstappen hype again. Not that that's ever happened before, but if we fast forward to next year, Tommo, in equal machinery, bruv, that Lewis Hamilton who's had Weetabix, the one that we saw at the Mexican Grand Prix this weekend, equal machinery, bruv, do you think Lewis Hamilton can take it to Mr. Max Verstappen, bruv, and ultimately beat him? Because this is the question that I'm getting from the Mexican Grand Prix this week.
Yeah, of course. I think we've seen, I think Lewis can, I think Charles can, I think Lando can. I think given the car to fight, yes, Max is making this sport look easy right now. But don't get it twisted. There's some serious talent on the grid right now. Be that Lewis, be that Charles, be that Lando, be that Fernando. I think that there's many a driver that could go toe-to-toe and battle consistently. We saw, first start of last year, didn't we? Charles and Max. I would still say I think Max is the best driver in Formula One. I think he's the most, whether you want to say in form or whatever, right? We're talking about having a battle. Even the most dominant sporting dynasties in any sport will get beaten occasionally, will have points scored against them, right? Max, when the other teams are able to give their star drivers the cars to fight, be that Mercedes with Lewis, be that McLaren with Lando, be that Aston Martin with Fernando. I don't know, that looks a while off now, doesn't it? But and be that Ferrari with Charles Leclerc. I mean, look at the pole positions. Over a lap, Charles has been able to a number of times just pull out that star quality that he has. So, mate, undoubtedly, of course they can fight him, beating him over the course of a 24 race season we're going to get next year.
Different.
That's a different conversation.
Different, bruv.
But can they be in that fight on pace? Those drivers, not just Lewis. I think more than just Lewis. 100%.
I reckon you could. I agree with you, brother. I reckon you could take races off Max Verstappen. He's not infallible, though he's very good. But the question that I keep on, this is what I keep wrangling with internally, whether anybody without stuff and or advantage, whether that's machinery, a bit of good luck, whether any of those 19 drivers on the grid can beat Max Verstappen in his final form over the course of a season. Because the more that I see of him, Tom, I'm just like, I'm trying to use as reference like Senna and like Mansell as a racer back in the day. Prost again, it's almost like he's looked at each of these drivers and he's picking like the best characteristics from them and he's combined them in one package. And I just think that's going to be, bruv, as a Lewis fan, I just think that's going to be really, really hard to beat, even if Lewis has had his bloody Weetabix, bruv. So,
mate, absolutely. But the thing is, right now, you can almost look at, and we've talked many a time about Mercedes' misgivings when it comes to pit stops and procedures and operations, right? When you are in a position where you have an advantage, Max knows he has this built-in advantage in himself, in his ability with this car, right? That combination, the car doesn't go anywhere without that Dutch guy at the wheel and vice versa, right? He's not winning, sprinting around the track. So it's that combination, that specific man and that specific machine is working to a T. Max knows he can, Red Bull, they're going to know in the back of their mind, they can afford, again, when we were grilling Mercedes pit stops last time out in Austin, or was it Qatar when we were grilling the pit stops?
No, Kota, you're right.
Yeah, it was Kota. Red Bulls were pretty poor relative as well, but they can get away with it because Max has got pace in hand and it's fine. Once these others start to knock on the door for wins, that's going to make those strategy decisions more. There's more on the line. Of course, those pit stops are even more important when you're fighting total, and that could determine whether you win a race or not. Max has got so much in hand right now that those procedures, they can do things at 95%, even just subconsciously. You guarantee you speak to any member of Rebel pit crew, a Rebel team, whatever, and they'll be like, no, 100%. But it's like where they are now, but approaching pit stops and the pressure and the meaning versus 2021 when they were doing these same pit stops and these same strategy calls. Come on, there's so much more on the line in 21 than there is this year for that side of the garage for Max's side. So I think it becomes more of a team sport. That team element becomes a bigger factor when there is multiple cars and drivers at the top. Right now, the team can afford to let themselves down a bit. Max can afford to, lift off a little bit earlier and coast a little bit more and still win because his levels are so high. But I think again, hoping next season and certainly 25, but even next year, I don't think there's an excuse to have a season dominated like this one. I think Max will still win, but at least let's just make it interesting. Please, teams, please.
Please, dear Lord. Oh my gosh, closer at the top than it is now. Please. That would be good. Go on then, Tommo. You touched on something that we've talked about on numerous occasions already. Pit stops. Mercedes, for once, put together put
They
together
were
a
right.
put together a set of pit stops sans mistakes, didn't they? For once in their life, 2.4 and 2.6, I think, on Lewis's side of the garage, as versus 3.4 and 3.6 when we were at Kota. Bloody Nora, Tommy. Were they listening? Were they watching the last lap, bruv, and
Mate,
hearing our moans?
we literally said it as soon as that was like 2-4, whatever. I was like, Cam, they've been listening, mate. Toto's been tuning in. All right. When he's been at hospital getting after his surgery, he's been like sticking last lap on and watching us cook, mate. Yes, it's about time. Like, and you've said it before. You know, there is no fundamental excuse. So, yeah, it's good to see because they needed to give themselves a kick up the backside, didn't they?
Mate, what one can't be competitive with 3.4 and 3.6 second pit stops. Not with a Red Bull team that's just firing on all cylinders.
Mate, look, listen, next year, those seconds saved and lost will make more of a difference more often. Like, that could have made a difference in Kota, whether or not Lewis at least got to be able to challenge Max. Obviously, you got disqualified anyway, but you know, if we're just taking that race in isolation, like that could have made a difference. And if everyone's catching, those seconds will become of bigger importance to Red Bull, you know, if they're leading the way with Max, but bigger importance to everyone because there will be opportunities. And if you can do 1.8s all the time instead of 3.6s, that's significant time.
Bruv, that could be the difference between a second and a first in the Drivers' Championship. Oh, bruv, I don't know. Speaking of which, Tommo, and you've got the top colour for this conversation. Talk to me about Scuderia Ferrari, bruv, because I am concerned for them, not because their package isn't quick, because I think they've got a quick car, but because of the drop-off, the disconnect between their quali pace and their race pace. What is going on, Tommy? I don't understand how you can be so fat. How Charles Leclerc can go 10 poles and not win any of them, like to Max Verstappen. What am I missing, Tommy? What's going on, bro?
Maybe that's what we need to do. We need to have a separate championship just for qualifying. I know Peter Brook, great channel. He on Twitter he gives out points based on qualifier positions, and Max is still winning, but not by he's like 60 points ahead of Charles. Maybe we should just start doing that on the side. And just why not? You wouldn't change anything. You're just giving another award. It's been a problem for a while, hasn't it, for Ferrari and Haas as well, who obviously take a lot from Ferrari. They've consistently been a quicker, especially in this new generation, a quicker quali car. Haas have made Q3 7 times with at least one car this year. In 19, 20 now.
Bonkers. And then they're events. Just last.
Yeah, and they're not even like close in the races to the point. That's the thing. Well, they are at the start, but by the end they're not. So, yeah, I don't know. I think for the problem for Ferrari, the problem I have, and a lot of the dialogue I'm hearing around Ferrari is we don't know why we're quick. We don't know why we're slow. Like, that's bad. That's really bad. I'm not hearing that from McLaren. I think I'm hearing very concise steps, typically from McLaren, very kind of one-directional. Yeah, I'm sure the odd race they might be a bit confused, right? But since they brought those upgrades, it's been very steady. Even Mercedes, right? They're kind of got this bit of a Frankenstein car at the minute. New chassis next year. I feel like there does seem to be a degree of their understanding is coming, but Ferrari, the fact you don't know, that for me just almost takes them out of my, if I'm thinking teams to dethrone Red Bull, that takes Ferrari out of that conversation for me almost straight away, mate. I don't know about you.
Mate, but their car is so good. This is the paradox, Tommo, that I can't reconcile. That car.
You don't win points on Saturday.
Yeah, you're right, bruv. You're right.
So it doesn't matter how good it is on Saturday. If your tyres are falling off, then you see it from the Haas. Like, you can only do so much. And it's like, yeah, if you were rewarding qualifying, which again, maybe that would be a cool little, I don't know, separate championship that you give some, I don't know, something to. But like, it's not, qualifying's one thing. It means you start, a few hundred feet in front of, somebody P10. Like, all right, cool. Well, it's just however many 100-mile lap race. Like, come on.
I need to do a deep dive, Tommy. This feels like a video. Why what's causing the differential as far as that Ferrari between? I just don't understand. I really don't get it. I know that they're a tyre eater, but surely this bigger differential this often. Surely we can't just attribute all of that to the tyre. It's got to be something more fundamental with, I don't know, the chassis or the handling dynamic. It's something more insidious that I'm missing.
If it was that simple, you would think that they would have fixed it by now.
Yeah.
So it can't be, right? It can't be that simple.
Bloody Nora, Tommo. They need to sort this out for next year, mate. They've been dealing with this tyre degradation, excessive tyre deg for like 24 months now. Bloody Nora. In fact, it's getting worse, Tommo. The gap is getting worse. Like you said, last year, Charles was able to fight in the first couple of races with Max properly and take a couple 25 points off of Max Verstappen. It looked like we were going to be in for a season, bro, for a second. And then look, how did that turn out, eh?
That's why the word upgrade is a dangerous word to use, because it implies things are going up. And sometimes you make a change and things don't quite go as up as you'd like. They might even go down, or just create new problems, because this is a sport of, I mean, when you actually deep it, like the percentage difference between these cars over a full race distance to do however many miles a typical F1 races, right? And then to finish 10 seconds behind the leader is a lot by F1 fan standards, and you're watching the sport is a lot. But like as a percentage is tiny. But that's it. That's what this, and these drivers are all such androids now. They're able to get pretty close to the peak. I'm sure, I think Max is the closest to the peak of his car because he seems more comfortable than anyone else's in their car relative. But it makes the sport fine margins. And if you just don't understand why you're munching through your tyres for 2 years, like, come on, what are you doing?
Not good enough. Come on, Freddie Vasseur, sort your life out, sir. We need you to. Right, but let me tangent, man. I want to talk about content creation for a second because it's very pertinent. It's apropos since I'm talking to the market-leading independent F1 content creator. 300k subscribers, Tommo. Give that fella a round of applause. Holy smokes. How does it feel, bruv? Like, what? Like, talk to me, man. Talk to me. Bask in your glory.
No, listen, I think for me, it was a multitude of factors. I think I came into this. I mean, my very first video, my first F1 video anyway, because I've been doing videos like YouTube for a while around football. So I'd already kind of developed a lot of the on-camera stuff, which I think takes time, right? And I was nowhere near as confident in 2016 when I first started making YouTube videos than I was in 2019 when I first started making F1 videos. So that kind of helped. But yeah, I just obviously lockdown and all that and Drive to Survive kind of helped. But yeah, man, it's I've been doing I've been full-time since just full-time with my channel being my main source of income since like the start of 22. But I'd been like freelancing for a bit before that. So I was quite used to kind of working for myself and, working from home a lot and all that. But hey, it's good. It's good. Listen, I think it's a very rewarding job, and you're getting a lot of you're going to have a lot of understanding of the experience that doing this kind of thing is, because fundamentally, from when I was doing this, whilst I was freelancing for WTF1 or whilst I was working full time just on the side or whatever, like fundamentally I'm still just making videos, talking to a camera, writing scripts, editing a video. It's just now I've got more time to put into it, but also it means I've got more of a responsibility to myself to stay kind of keep relevant within the space, but also this is my breadwinner now, so I've got a mortgage to pay. But yeah, man, no, I love it. But just like any job, there's pros and cons. But I'm so privileged to be able to do this like full time. It's it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy.
Levels, bruv, levels, and there are lots of cons. Like as far as talk to me about navigating your way through the space, because F1 is a weird one, right? I don't know. I've been arguing lots of back and forth with mates that F1 potentially, as a space, as a community, is more toxic today than is football. You can't say anything, bruv, without getting smashed. If you big up Lewis, then Max and Melissa are going to smash you. If you big up Max, then Colt LH are going to smash you. If you big up Alonso, then do you know what I mean? You can't win. There's no level of diplomacy that you can institute to avoid all of the bullets. So how do you navigate the space, Tommo, like without taking any of those shots to heart?
Yeah, I think again, I used to do football stuff. That was my YouTube hobby. You know, when it was still a hobby. This was a hobby when I started. This was a hobby up until, you know, again, this channel got me the opportunity to go back to freelancing again. I think everyone I've spoken to consistently who there's quite a few football creators that I know who create football content first and foremost. Like Niren's a good example, obviously on Last Lap as well. He's football's his main thing. There's a bunch of people I know, and consistently everyone I've spoken to and asked that very same question that you said you were discussing in terms of comparing the spaces. I don't know if it's because I'm in it. You know, I'm more likely to be, because I've got a following, therefore I'm more likely to see that one negative comment, or more likely to have a tweet snowball and whatever. It does seem that the space is, I mean, don't get me wrong, football's got terrible issues with social. I would be reluctant actually to say it's worse, because I think, you know, it's worse to the person in it, and it's the nature of the stick you get as well that affects people differently. Like the kind of insults the kind of attacks on character. You know, I think for having a sporting opinion, and just people will, or just the cynicism, you know, and that's not a community I'm interested in facilitating myself. You know, I try on my, I'm just honest. Like it would be the amount of people, I'm sure you get it as well, like who think you're being disingenuous and think you're just saying something for effect or whatever. It's like, well, no, because I would have to then keep up with all of the lies I'm telling to then, oh, wait, no, I've got to lie about this because actually I'm meant to have this bias against whoever. It's like, no, you speak earnestly, you have an opinion, your opinions change over time. Shock, people like bring up a tweet from 2 years ago. I was like, well, yeah, I think differently to then. Like, are you not a human? That's what humans do. And it's just become this binary, like, oh, how much crap can you throw at someone else? And it's difficult. It used to get to me, I think, more than it does now. I don't know about you, mate, but I think the biggest, the thing I struggle with most is, and that's where Twitter is terrible for it, mate, is being misunderstood. That's the one. That's the one that's I consistently come back to that as being if you want to have a go at me for an opinion I genuinely have, and call me out every name under the sun, I can deal with that. But when you're having a go at me and attacking my character or whatever, for something that I'm not trying to communicate, words are a vessel for our feelings or whatever we want to communicate. When that's the stuff that really like bothers me, because then it's like, oh no, you're like projecting a view that I have of the world that is incorrect. I know it's incorrect, but you know, that's just the way it is, mate. But would you say that's the thing that you struggle with the most, if anything?
Bruv, I've just disengaged from all the. I think now, I mean, I'm getting older in terms of social media now, right? Before I was a young pup and it never really went on Twitter. Over the past 24 months, though, I think I understand the rules of engagement. There are certain serious topics, Tommo, that I'm not touching them. In my mind, I've got an opinion. I can argue back and forth with rational-minded people every single day of the week and try and substantiate and justify. But Twitter, Tommo, for me, if it's like serious, like, I don't even know, you're talking about what's going on in the world at the moment as an example, I'm not going on there to talk about that, Tommo. I'm just not, because there are people waiting for me on Twitter to misinterpret and twist. And do you know what I mean? I think there are a large percentage of people on Twitter who exist only on Twitter to twist and tinker with and misinterpret, to your point, and try and like subvert anyone's opinion on anything. And I haven't got time for that. If it's a meaningful conversation, if it's important, then let's engage with it as such. And I just think, Tommo, at this point, there's certain conversations, even around like Lewis as an example, like if we're talking about race and social Tom, I'm not going to talk about it. We can sit down at a table and have a drink about it and have a proper conversation. I'm not going on to Twitter to talk about that stuff.
It's not the place.
I'm not going on there so I can say something and then somebody can say, "Oh, but Cameron, on the 16th of September 2021, you said this, which is in diametric opposition to what you're saying." Tommo, I'm not. I'm not, bruv. Genuinely, I understand now through a couple different skirmishes from experience that Twitter isn't the place to engage serious things meaningfully, bruv. You just can't, because there are too many sideline merchants that are just waiting in the wings for you to say something that they disagree with and destroy you for that, Tommo. And I don't think that's fair, bruv.
Yeah, I think, when you're having a sporting discussion with friends, right? There's nothing. Again, this is why it's great on the last app, right? It's me, Niran, and two guests, and when we have you, Shez, Baxty, whoever else is on, and you're sat there, a group of like-minded people talking about a sport that you enjoy, and you disagree, you agree on certain points, whatever, right? And there's good faith. Everyone's approaching that conversation in good faith. And if you say something I don't agree with, I'll be like, "Oh, hang on, no, what about that? Have you thought about that?" And then maybe you have, but actually no. Then you've got that's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm interested in doing. That's why I love like doing my live streams, because I've got the live chat there. I'll say something, and then someone in the live chat might be like, "Oh, hang on, actually no, this," and I'll be like, good point. I still disagree. Or good point. Oh, actually, no, that is a good point. Actually, I considered that. Like that's what is interesting to me. Like when I break it down to fundamentally what I find interesting in talking about this sport and why I do this and why I went to the length of talking about football and now talking about, Formula One on YouTube. That's what I'm interested in doing. And I love having those conversations because I don't have enough, again, not a lot of my friends are F1 fans, and that's probably part of the reason why I got into this as well. And it's like, it's a forum to talk about it. And when you do your Twitter spaces and this channel and, your videos with Pete, I'm sure, he gives you different perspectives that you hadn't considered. And I'm sure you give him different perspectives he hadn't considered as well, as, two people from different generations and a totally different like outlook and perspective on things. And I think, I'm interested in having good faith conversations like about this sport. And just so many people, it's just like, it's not enough. Some people just like, "Oh no, it's because you're biased." No, why is it not enough to just be like, you just have a difference of opinion? Like you just got a difference of perspective. You're just interpreting the rules different. It always has to be, no, you're maliciously biased. You're specifically, you're calculated in your like, no, you just disagree. That's okay. Like it's not that deep. So it's just this lack of good faith. Also with Twitter, the problem is as well, it's because, once you get a few retweets, it goes to an audience that has no idea who you are necessarily. And then they've got their own, whether they feel overly defensive of a certain driver or whatever, they've got their own, they're in kind of I think a lot of fan bases feel like they're in a constant defensive mode of their driver. And so then they just apply the worst possible, the most cynical perspective on your words and just run with that as fact. And again, that's not, words are a vessel for our feelings. And you can, I've done it before, mate. I've literally done the same community post and same tweet, and the community post, everyone subscribed to me. They know what I'm about to some extent, enough to subscribe, right? Versus the response night and day. Honestly, sometimes it is crazy because the vast majority on community are in good faith because they understand to an extent who I am and where I come from and my typical opinions on things and where I stand. On Twitter, it just goes out into the world and then everyone's seeing it, and then it gets kind of lost in translation. But you just got to accept it, mate. It's part of it. You want to fight as much as you can, but ultimately, I'm very happy with the community I've cultivated, and I tweet a lot, but I also know that I'm happy with how I represent myself online and how to talk about things. We're all guilty of, especially the amount of live stuff as well. It's, you say some things and you might be a little bit insensitive in the moment, or say things a little bit that maybe I was a bit hyperbolic in that moment, and then people will just hold that against you for the rest of your life. But it's like, whatever, man. Like,
such a shame, Tom. Genuinely, bro. No, genuinely, I'm withdrawing from it. I recoil from it each and every single time now, because it's just almost like you can't have a meaningful conversation without getting... The typical one that I see at the moment is if you even insinuate that this season hasn't been the best season that you've ever seen, and talk about it being boring and a bit monotonous. Well, Cameron, between 2014 and 2020, why weren't you saying that then? Well, because I was podcasting a little bit, but I didn't talk about this stuff that in depth. And it's just like the whataboutism and the defensiveness and the... it's long, Tommo. It's really, really long, and I think it's
but also, like, that as an example, right? If a driver I like, if a football team I like is doing well one year, and then a team that I don't like is doing well another year, and then I'm like, I have favourites, I have preference. That doesn't mean... The thing is, people they think that if you have favourites, that means you can't be objective. Everyone has favourites. I assure you, Crofty has favourites, right? I assure you that every broadcaster, every driver has favourites, has preference. And you have... The people say they got a driver as their profile picture. I'm like, bruv, are you not like... Come on, at least try it. At least try and be... That's what I see with Twitter accounts we've talked about. There's just no interest in trying to be objective. There's no interest to try and understand the alternate point of view. It's just, I'm on this side. And you know what? If you want to do that, fine. But then don't come at other people for being biased. Like, come on.
Mate. Throw stones, glass houses and all that. It's honestly, bro, it's crazy. It is crazy. But I think I've come to the conclusion. I think I understand it for what it is, Tommo. I think we're in the minority. If you look at the complete F1 community, the ability to be objective and bias in... have your favourites, like you said, but then to say, well, you know what, Lewis was at fault for the George incident, or Max was at fault for... So, do you know what I mean? That ability to both be partisan but also be objective in a different circumstance is very bloody rare, Tommo. And it's my failing, here's me self-critiquing now, it's my failing for superimposing that ability on an F1 community, some of which, 25% of which are brand new, coming through Drive to Survive, right? We just don't have that ability and may never. And more fool me for expecting to engage, I don't know, X person on Twitter and expecting them to have that... Do you know what I mean? Be able to do the partisan thing and then objective as well.
I would agree that I think we're a minority amongst people who put themselves out there in terms of, if we're going to include not just YouTube creators, I think, the YouTube creator sphere, I think, is pretty good. But like, if you think everyone who like regularly posts on Twitter and has a, that follows the sport actively, I wouldn't say we're a minority amongst all fans, though, because I don't know. I think my perspective of F1, and having been to some Grand Prix now and spoken to people who watch my stuff in person, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's because I like to think I gravitate a certain type of audience, and you're always going to get, everyone's entitled to follow the sport how they want to. It's only a problem when it becomes this bad faith shit show, basically. But I still believe, I think the majority of fans, I like to think the majority of fans, you see the people, the kind of people who write comments, like the vast minority of people who are actually writing the comments. Is a vast minority of people who are sending the tweets. I mean, I never used to tweet, like barely at all. Even when I first started doing F1 stuff, and before that, I never really tweeted at all. But I've used Twitter for years because I used it as a news source, and I follow different people's opinions and whatever. But I still believe the majority of fans can discern between that tribal, passion, bias that we all have. I have for for Albon. And also when he's had a stinker, like in Australia early this year, and he binned it and bottled a massive opportunity. Well, it's fine margins, but it's on him, and it's the top tier motorsport, and he deserves criticism for it. So I don't know. Do you agree with that?
Bro, I think it's rarer than you give it credit for, honestly. I think it's very, very rare that people will sacrifice the ability to score a point at the altar of objectivity. I just don't think they'll do it. But brilliant example, right? You saw that article about Checo Perez in a Mexican periodical, and it said, so the headline read something like "Corres y te vas," which means race and then go away. The headline was like Checo Perez in the foreground, Max in the background, insinuating that, listen, corres y te vas, like race and then go away. You're basically not welcome here, in brackets, because of all the xenophobia and borderline racist stuff that Helmut Marko said. And then underneath the article, the actual article, not the headline, was all about the Mexican racing minister, or whoever, trying to, like, begging for cooler heads to prevail. And if you see the reaction to that, so my guy Windsor put out a tweet that went, it was like, mate, this headline is not a good headline. And the reaction to that, Tommo, you can imagine, as you might have experienced in the past, was like, Helmut Marko is racist. And if you tweet anything in his defense, I was like, bloody Nora. Like, I went and did a bit of research around it because I didn't want to talk to it without being well read. And the Mexican history of that, Corres y te vas, is a reference to Gómez y te vas. A long time ago, there was a Mexican minister or president who was having like a diplomatic sit down with like Bush and Castro. And what he didn't want to do is fudge up his relationship with America and Bush by having Fidel Castro like outstay his welcome, right? So he's telling Castro, Gómez y te vas, like, eat and then go, so that by the time George Bush gets here, you're not here, because I don't want to I don't want to muddy the waters here with, it's techie, bruv. It is techie, but yeah, and still, if you're going to incite, people say it's sarcastic and it was a joke as a headline, but if you're going to incite that sort of stuff, then I think it's worthy of maybe not criticism, but it's worth a conversation on the eve of Mexican Grand Prix race weekend. It's techie, Tommo.
Right.
Techie.
Actually, I want to ask you this, actually. This has just made me think of something. This is something I kind of struggle with, right? Because there's a balance. So say something happens, okay? Something happens in the race and I've got an opinion and I'll put out my belief around it. And often you'll get a criticism of, oh, by engaging with it, you are, even if you're engaging with it directly in, respectful criticism, whatever, constructive criticism, right? It will, I know drivers get this criticism leveled at them as well. And I think it's unfair. That them reacting. So say when, I don't know, what was it? When, I'm trying to think, the Fernando Lewis incident. Spa. No, Spa.
Yeah.
And the kind of back and forth after that. I think that's the example I'm thinking of. Regardless, like, where do you sit on the whole? Because I feel like part of me is like, by me just right. So I'm not allowed to engage with something because some people who might follow me might then use that to then attack that person. You know what I mean? Like if I've been constructively critical of, I don't know, Charles Leclerc, and then Charles Leclerc, some people might say, oh, well, by you're saying this, you're bringing hate towards Charles. But I'm not bringing hate, but people might come through my way. It's like I'm really reluctant to engage with a lot of other creators because I respect, because I do it. I see that if someone tweets something I don't agree with, like another creator, I'm very reluctant to like reply saying, oh, I don't really agree with this, because there unfortunately will be some people who then see that and then will then attack that person and take it beyond the line. But like, where's the balance in that? Because I want to be able to be honest, but also I don't want me just having a respectful, honest opinion to then incite others. And I feel like almost doing that, then just you're kind of giving up to the people who are the toxic
100,
people,
bruv.
and almost like letting them win. But like, how do you win?
100%, bro. Tommo, I don't think you are. Listen, there's a famous quote in The Wire that you can't lose if you don't play the game. And Tommo, listen, genuinely, bro, it's sad. As sad as it is, I'm not sure that somebody, despite your best intention, and you're a good person, bro, your heart is pure, particularly in the space, right? But Twitter is such, life is such that you're not meant to engage with like hundreds of thousands of people, and Twitter is a vehicle for that. So when they see Tommo tweeting out something about, I don't know, X, and then they disagree with it, then all of us, they're not going to think, oh, wait there, Tommo's a really good person. I've had a chat with him over a beer, and I can see that he's very sincere in the way that he engages F1. He's a true F1 fan, not like a Johnny come lately type, and he leads his life in a way that's, you know what I mean? They don't know all that's all like lost. That's lost in the roundings. They
just
don't know.
Just a name on a screen.
Bang. They don't know, Tommo. So as soon as they see an opinion that again is diametrically opposed to theirs, kill Tommo. Tommo is the devil, burn him at the stake. And I just think it's a shame, bruv. It's a shame that I've taken to engage in Twitter with a filter, bruv. Anytime I see somebody that has a tendency to fly off the handle, like to just react in that way, and like are more fans of drivers than the sport, I'm just like, I'm out. I can't talk to that person, bruv. I just won't do it. Sad as is.
And that's the thing. Like for me, it's like sometimes I feel like, you know, we all have days when like I feel like, oh, I can't be asked with getting some stick. Like I can't be asked with putting something that might be a bit contentious because, you know, your mental health's not feeling particularly great on one day or whatever, right? We all have those. We all have those days where we don't really. You don't feel like you want to engage with it, so you just stay silent because then there's nothing for anyone to react to. But part of me as well is like, no, it shouldn't be like this. I should be able to
100%, bro.
Like tweet my beliefs without it causing an absolute like mess. And drivers should be able to be raw and honest. It's almost like, you know, when drivers are raw and adrenaline filled on the radio, and then we like lambast them for being a bit, you know, angry on the radio. Like, I think, yes, of course, there is a line. And I think sometimes drivers do go over that line. But a lot of the time, we're just, you know, people just attacking them over in a context situation that you could never even fathom. Anyone can pretend, imagine what it's like to play at Wembley and be a professional football player, but no, you can't emulate that experience, that visceral experience to be in an F1 car.
It's I don't ever want to criticize drivers, but listen, sometimes they are worthy of criticism. Tom, I'll tell you that you go on Twitter and criticise Lewis Hamilton for crashing into George Russell the other day because it was ostensibly his fault, but Twitter will see that and decry you as like a racist xenophobe. It's like, what I'm talking about here, straight and simple, is the incident. I'm not saying that Lewis Hamilton hasn't had to overcome barriers all his life and that he hasn't done fantastically well as the first black driver, the greatest statistically F1. I'm not talking about, this isn't that. We could talk about that another time in BLM and social justice. What this is here is me ingesting the sport. I'm watching and reading and analysing this incident through an F1 lens exclusively. You won't catch me, Tommo. It's sad. You are right, bruv. It's really, really sad that we can't go online on social media and engage these things meaningfully and just even ask a bloody question about, I don't know, Lewis or Charles or
in good faith. In good faith.
Bro, people don't want to hear it, Tommo. You've said it first. That people aren't interested in that. People will see what you've written and try and rip you down because it serves their purpose.
And again, like, because there's so many people not operating in good faith, then it's easy. I get it, because it's easy to then think, well, everyone who's a YouTuber has this stance because they all want to be on Sky Sports or they all want to get good guests, so they're always going to toe the line or whatever, or every Verstappen fan's just going to always defend Max. Like, actually, you can be a Verstappen fan, you can be a Hamilton fan, and they do something wrong. Well, and something happens and you don't think they've done anything wrong. And it is not because you're biased towards them. It's because you don't think that individual human being did anything wrong.
Bro.
But there's just this assumption that everyone's in bad faith, which is, I think, this difference with YouTube and being able to create your own community. You can talk consistently about subjects, and then I think the audience almost appreciates that ability to have a good faith dialogue and not agree with you on everything. Yeah, exactly.
They've got that relationship with you, bro. But some of these topics are very, very. I'll share this with you quickly, Tommo, as we round third base. I had a conversation with a friend who's got like he's a footballing journo. He's got like probably about 140,000 followers on Twitter now. And we had a conversation about certain things. I'm standing on his shoulders on the back of this conversation. He was like, Cam, just don't mention certain things on Twitter. It's not worth your while. Even if you are coming from a place of sincerity and reason, people will just try and bring you down. I goes, go on then, Johnny, let's have this chat now. And we started talking about Paul Pogba. And he was like, he used to go on. We know what Paul Pogba was, for those of you football fans watching that. Paul Pogba is a brilliant player, but could Paul Pogba be a bit lack in endeavour and effort at times? Well, kind of. Like you'd see him not tracking back and doing all this stuff. My friend said, listen, Cam, what you can't do is go on Twitter and start talking about Paul Pogba being lazy. I was like, what? Why not? Like, sometimes he's a bit lazy. And this is Johnny to me, by the way, like a Caucasian guy educating me on the rules of engagement. He says, Cam, as soon as you say that, there'll be so many people that point their gun at you and say that you're racist, because there are racial undertones that people are dealing with all around the world who are being called lazy when they're not lazy. And your statement, even though factually correct, invokes that it agitates them. And I was like, bloody no, Johnny, I get it, bruv. I get it. No longer can I go on and just shoot my rational-minded gun without the sensitivity that some people around the world are going to look at that sentence and say that, Cameron, you're a racist, you've got no culture, or you're inciting racial hatred against Paul Pogba. So it's techie sometimes, Tommy. There's like all these there's all these things going on in the background that sometimes we're not privy to. Or even with my upskilling and trying to understand social media and the ins and outs of it and trying to navigate that world, sometimes I'm just not privy. Hence why I started to take my mate's counsel and just, you know what, if it's a bit techie, do I really need to go and make a statement about it on Twitter and bloody put my soft underbelly out there ready to get stabbed by sideline merchants? Not really, bruv. It's not worth it, Tommo. have a chat with mates offline, meaningfully engage it that way, bruv. It's as sad as it is, Tommo, and I can hear it in your sigh, but we've all experienced it. Twitter's not the place to have certain conversations. It's just not, bruv. People out here try and cancel your platform for that, for no reason, because they don't know who you are and they've got an agenda. Sad. Yeah,
exactly. And I think as long as, what I will say, right, and the reason because we still tweet. I still see you tweeting. You still see me tweeting, right? We still do it. We're still
watered
drawn
down
to
though.
it.
Robinson's cordial, bruv.
Only the best, Cameron. Only the best. No own brand stuff. No Tesco own brand. But I think that, my almost like live reactions to things happening, my immediate thought, and ultimately it will often come back to, and look, things can, there's most of the overwhelming majority of the time, whenever I've got, clapped back on social media, and there's been a couple of times like in live streams or something, and I've maybe said something a bit insensitive or whatever, and just a bit hyperbolic, and it's been, that's now become my default opinion on a matter or whatever, which is, that's just the we all do it. If you had a camera pointed at you 24/7, you're going to say, and you're going to misrepresent yourself or whatever. I think it comes back to me, as long as I can stand by, my intent and what I meant and how I wanted to come across, then in the immediacy, when you've got loads of people, misunderstanding you, whether that's maliciously or not, whether that's just, they just see that perspective. And I'm sure it's a bit of both. I don't think everyone's, necessarily, purposefully misconstruing or purposefully framing what you're saying in the way that, suits their perspective. I can, it's rough in the moment sometimes, but I can still stand by those and they won't get deleted. Like they'll stay up and life goes on. And some people might bring those up like months later and be like, yeah, cool. Like that's not what I said is not what you're saying, but cool, fine, crack on. And almost like you build a skin for it that you just crack on. I mean, the amount of stick these drivers get, and these drivers use Twitter, use Instagram. They see more than you think. Trust me, they see more than you think.
Wow.
I could almost guarantee there's drivers who have seen some of your content. I know drivers have seen some of my content, and it's like, you'd be surprised by how you tweet about someone and they might see it. They might well see it, especially if it gains a bit of traction. And it's like, you have to just learn to. It's not real life. This isn't how humans have functioned for 99.9% of human existence. We always lived in our little tribes, in our little communities with only the people we saw in a specific part of the world. And, that we never ventured out. Like that's how human beings have existed for so long. And we've built our social kind of hard wiring around that. And then all of a sudden we've just got this thing where there's this big number next to your name and you say something and there's this big number of likes and then big number of quote retweets and all these people telling you to die in a fire. And it's like, whoa, that's a lot. That's a lot. That takes some practice to get used to. And just, be able to not let that. Yeah, that's not a reflection of you. I know who I am. You know who you are. And as much as, there are going to be people out there who will try and pigeonhole you and make their perspective of what they're ultimately just seeing, letters on maybe a face cam in a YouTube video, which again makes it a little bit more personal and then a bit more tough. When I still remember my first proper hate comment from back when I did football stuff. You never forget your first.
Not pleasant, bro.
But that is, for the privilege to be able to do this as a job, and to live, have the independence I have in terms of my work, and which means so much to me. That's so valuable to me, to keep that independence and control over my time. And I know vast majority of people don't have that. That's a small price to pay. And ultimately I choose to do this job. And as much as I'd like that conversation to be better, I think the way that Twitter and all that, this kind of the way social media works and how it rewards sensationalism, that's the way it is. And you'd love it to be different, but it just isn't. And you just kind of have to accept that.
Oh, I love that, bruv. This is why he's the GOAT. This is why he's the GOAT. There's a line from a Rudyard Kipling poem that comes to mind when we're talking about all this social media stuff, Tommo. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, and one day you'll be a man, my son. Rudyard Kipling's. If I'm telling you, bruv, you're a better man than me. Tommo, you are a better man than me. Bruv, it's been a privilege, man. I feel like this has been quite cathartic. At some point, I wanted to take a lie down on a couch. It felt so...
I do put people to sleep sometimes with my waffling.
This is therapy, man. This is therapy. We shall overcome. Bruv, it's been a massive privilege. That has been Tommo. Tommo, if you're not subscribed to that fella's channel, then genuinely, what are you doing with your life? Tommo on the YouTubes, TWOMMO on the Twitters. Got that right, Tommo? I hope. Boom. Tell me about what you got going on over the next 42 to 72 hours. If there's anything that you can share and you want people to tune into, maybe, potentially.
So I should have my video dropping tomorrow. I'm going to talk all about this Fernando Alonso situation at Aston Martin and all these Red Bull rumours that have come out of nowhere as well. Going to touch on that. Also making an opinion. When is this coming out, Cam? When is this?
This will be dropping on the morning of tomorrow, Tuesday midday-ish.
Oh, okay. So keep an eye on. You might be region blocked if you're not in the UK because a certain podcast I might be appearing on tomorrow as well. So that should be fun. Yeah. So no, all good, man. All good. And yeah, mate. Honestly, like I think something with this job, it's hard to find people who really understand it. You know, I think like it's really nice chatting with you and chatting with other creators because there is a degree of empathy that we can have for each other that most people won't because when you it's a different kettle of fish and when you're out there it's like any job, you know, when you speak to someone who understands what you do, it is cathartic, like you say. It's a very so yeah, it's a valuable conversation. Hence why we've gone half an hour over what we initially said. No, it's not, mate. No, it's because our you know, having these chats is important, and I think, you know, this can also, ironically, this can be quite an isolating job as well, right?
Oh, bro.
Work from home full time, and you know, see the wife in the evenings. But like doing last lap's great. It gets me out of the house, but like it's not like it was back when I was working up the city. So yeah, it's good, man. It's good chatting, and you're killing it. Keep going.
Oh, bro.
We all know, listeners. We all know Cam to the moon. Right?
Oh, bro, we'll get there, Tommo.
If you were crypto, I'd be investing.
Let's go. BTC, Ether, all that stuff. No, bro, you're an absolute legend. And, by the way, before I forget, go and listen to, obviously you need to like, comment, subscribe to all of this stuff. Por favor. And then shortly thereafter, Tommo stuff. And then shortly thereafter, the last lap with Niran. Go and watch those watch-alongs. Market-leading watch-along setting. Market-leading podcast. Go and check it out. Rate, review, all that good stuff. Tommo, you've been a legend. I've been Cameron F1. As always, between now and next time, do me a favour. Look, but never stir. Peace.